Good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Joining us on the podcast for the first time in 2024, play-by-play broadcaster for your Sacramento Republic, Rob McAllister. Rob, Happy New Year, my friend. How much are you looking forward to the new season?
Yeah, season number 11. Hard to believe,
Wow.
but here we go. Insane. It sort of felt like how we felt last year. A lot of guys coming back. You have a lot of continuity. You know sort of what to expect, and I think that's good, right? I'm okay with that, especially because we had a really good run.
What are your thoughts on, and I've been asking kind of softly I asked it to Coach and to Jack on I feel like at the end of the season, regular season, there was a sprint towards playoffs, trying to get that number one seed. The way that Phoenix played in the postseason, does that change your mindset of the going for the number one seed versus maybe getting guys rest, rotation going into playoffs? What's your thoughts there?
No, with just with one game in a game like this where it's sort of the luck of the draw. I mean, baseball is the same way, right? Where you kind of get hot the same, but you can't manufacture that. So it's easy to say, well, we'll rest, but then you start to develop bad habits. And then you're going to say the following season, well, we shouldn't do that. We need to go from day one. So I don't see it as a failure. I think that we had a bad 10 minutes, so it just happened where they capitalized. Not every team's going to be able to capitalize. I mean, Emil Quayshow, it's the best goal I've ever seen him hit. Like he didn't hit a single one of those type of goals for us. And so, congrats to them. I think they just got on a run and they played well. And I think they bought into their coach. And unfortunately, he's not coming back for them. But it's not always that way. I mean, look at Lou City. They've had success along the way, and that's worked out really well. So I think we stick to what we do. And if you don't have a deep Open Cup run and a lot of extra games, I think it's a little bit easier. But I think they've brought in guys that can help spell that. I mean, you see some of the guys were just tired at the end, and you can't sprint for 34 games. You just can't do it. But now I think we have some new guys who can help spell and give certain guys rest. And I think that's going to be the difference maker to me. I just don't see how Mark Briggs and the new staff are going to ultimately change their mentality. You're either that type of person that goes all in, or you're not. And I just don't think he's that laid back, chill kind of coach that just says, yeah, we'll turn it up. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just wanted to ask because I thought it was at least an interesting point. And that's kind of what he said as well, and what Jack said as well. So I just was interesting piece, off a team. And you're right, one team doing it can't change your mindset year in and year out. Hey, I want to talk about going into the new year. We saw Sacramento in 2023 start off the season red hot, and then cool off a little bit in terms of scoring goals. But what are the things that you feel like Sacramento can do early in this season? And what were the things that they were doing well early last season that you're hoping they can take again out of training camp?
Well, everyone forgets there's a lot of key injuries during that time. I mean,
True,
Roro
yeah.
wasn't back. Sebastian had some, health issues. You had Luis Felipe, who was in and out of the lineup. I mean, you just had a lot of key figures that were rolling early on in the season. So I mean, and every team deals with it, right? But I think these were just kind of critical to our success early on. Obviously, you'd always like to score more goals, but we're also not a wide open team. So I feel like defensively, we've been very good. And now there's some either, more depth, I guess you could say, in the back, or there's just guys are going to get pushed and get better. And they want to win. I think everyone felt such a bitter taste in their mouth after last year that they know it was right there. They were the best team, I think, in the entire league. I mean, you can always argue that Phoenix ultimately was, but I think from March till November, it was them. So I don't, I don't expect a whole lot different this year. And I just think that the mentality and, can be the same. I think we'll have success if guys are healthy. Now, the other good thing is having Trevor Monty, like that's going to guy who can ultimately get you goals kind of out of nowhere, right? And I think we saw Russell Cicerone do that a little bit. And I think we're just going to have guys now. Arnold Lopez is here, a little bit longer. I'm not that worried. Maybe I will be 2 months in, but I don't think so. It's like I just think business as usual, but the carrot's there for them.
It feels like this is the position that Lou City was in 2 years ago, really, where it's just like it seems like 3 to 4 years of just rolling the same guys back and having that same success. It feels like that's the kind of stability Sacramento's had, um, getting to the Open Cup final 2 years ago and then to the Western Conference final last year. Obviously, they don't have a trophy to show for it, but in terms of comfortability, feels like that's kind of where Sacramento is in the stability there. I want to ask on. So we didn't get to see Roro and Russell really play much together, other than very early in the season. It seems like that's kind of the thing I'm most excited to see is like how can those two guys work off of each other? How can Russell get open and get more opportunity with Roro's creativity? Is that something that you feel like is the biggest question mark on what that will look like heading into this year, or no?
Well, to me, it's actually going to be the wing play, which actually seems interesting because I think when that is really working, the rest of that field is even better. So that means, what does Alder Sanchez look like? What's Dami look like? What's Jack going to look like? And Jonathan Ricketts, who signed, he's going to be kind of a versatile player as well. I think that's sort of the outside is where you're going to see the success then kind of translate to the rest of them. Now, Roro is going to be even better if those other guys are performing well and becoming dangerous threats because they're going to have to choose, and that allows Roro to sort of figure out ways. Now, I think Keko is a big loss. It's probably our one loss that we're going to feel, but hopefully Christian Pirano can be that. And because Keko had ability to not only set guys up, I mean, he was one of the top assist guys in the league, but also could find ways to almost win games for you, find ways to get goals. So we're going to need someone like that. And that also is going to then help out your certain connections with players, and we'll see how those develop. But whether that be Roro or Russell or whoever else, I just think the more dangerous you are, the harder it's going to be to stop, and the less likely you're going to have spells where you're not doing well because we can't just rely on Russell Cicerone to get 20 plus goals every year. And if you are, then you're going to be in trouble with any player. I think Russ could probably have that this year. I think he's primed to do that. But let's make sure we have other guys as threatening as well because it will make his job even easier.
I like the Pirano point you made because he's a player where we've seen how dynamic he can be, especially with the ball at his feet. Never quite seemed like he got comfortable with this group. It's so tough coming in mid-season. I am very excited to see what it looks like with a full camp and then, getting more comfortable with the guys, understanding tendencies. I feel like he's a guy who could really have a breakout year for the Republic this year. What are your thoughts on some of where his ceiling could be with this team?
I loved it. I think he had a nice partnership with Luther Archimed last year, and obviously Luther's moved on, but um, he's fantastic. I mean, he's exactly what you needed off the bench last year. Now he might start this year, right? He might start in that Keko spot. So we'll see how this all lines up. And Mark Briggs might change it, and you might have Trevor and Russell in at the same time, or Sebastian and Russell back like we were, or Trevor. Maybe all three of those guys are going here at times. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. But he's such a dynamic player, and he never stops. And I mean, he's an and one mixtape. He can break down anybody, on the dribble essentially. And so we'll see how he fits in. I think that's going to be the biggest step for him because what I've learned over these last 10 years is just because someone is really good doesn't mean they always fit within a team. And as I'm just talking about the Republic, I'm talking about a lot of different teams. Sometimes the fit just isn't there. And I'm not saying that's not going to be, but that is something that he's going to have to adjust and he's going to have to grow into and find where his lane is. I think Luis Felipe is a really good example of that. I think the first year he came in, he was trying to find his way, and then and then he kind of has had to adjust from time to time and time again until getting hurt last year. I mean, he was just rolling because he found a way where he can be a big contributing factor. So I think Christian Pirano is that guy this year.
I'm looking forward to seeing how his dynamic ability affects Sacramento's attack. I want to jump to the 9 spot. You mentioned Trevor Amon. Sebastian Herrera, who when he was healthy was really good last year. He had the ability, that hold up play. He was really good aerially. I'm interested to see because I don't think Amon is quite the same type of player as Herrera, but we saw Sacramento have the same kind of effect with Luther Archimed off the bench. How interesting do you think it is to have two different types of nines who can do different things well, and how much does that change game in and game out for the attack?
Well, what made Luther great is he worked so hard, he was so physical, and he was fast. And so it became a problem instantly. And I think Luther just needs more touches, and he's probably going to be served better on a team that's not contending for a championship. Like he just needs to get more minutes, essentially. I don't think he's going to find it here. I think it's a loss for us, but ultimately I think Trevor coming in could be that, or maybe Trevor started. We don't know how it's all going to play out, right? But when you have different players that do different things, as long as it fits within your overall system, it's really hard to defend. And I think we saw a couple teams like that that could really cause you fits, and it really worked. And when it's too one dimensional, you know it's going to go to one player. Like a few years ago, when we kind of had Cameron Wass as our main option, it was really easy to stop us after a while, or you just start a double team and there's not much there. So I think being dynamic, looking for opportunities is going to help guys. And I think that's where Mark can try to find this year is, okay, how do we get other goals other than Jack? Or how does Dami Villader and Alder Sanchez put up 6, 7 goals this year? And it doesn't have to be, 2 or 3 in a game. It could literally be one every month. And that could be game-winning goals. And so I think that's where you're going to want to make that biggest leap this year. And if they're studying the foundation already of the last 2 seasons, that's where they got to find the opportunities. And so that's why I'm very excited about this team again this year, is that if guys want to grow and guys are hungry and want to play, then I think we're destined to have another good run.
Do you feel like there's any big question marks going into this year? Like, what's the big thing you're like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play out? Because I just feel like we know the defense is going to be solid. It's been solid for 2 to 3 years now. Like, what is the biggest question mark going into 2024?
Biggest question mark to me would be with some of the young guys, David Kimbrough, Rafa, Blake, Willie, right? And then you're talking about, do they have a role? And is Mark going to trust them, right? Because you cannot play all of these guys 34 games. And there's going to be 10, 20-minute spells where these guys are going to need to come in and probably do something. It's going to be injuries. I've never seen a soccer season where someone or a whole team went without injuries, right? We had it last year. We've had it every single year. So can these guys be productive? Does Mark and the staff trust them to be productive and ultimately find a way? Doesn't always score goals, but to be contributing. I mean, look at Alder Sanchez. We rolled over. We didn't talk about it enough. He came in and looked like a veteran. He had not played significant minutes really at this level. He played Tacoma a little bit, but ultimately, he came in when Dami got hurt. He was ultimately a great player to put in those positions, and there wasn't a drop off. Now I think Dami maybe a little more dynamic one-on-one, but Alder gave you exactly what you need to do. I think those other young guys, you're probably not going to see Davian score like he did in the academy. It's just not going to happen, right? I mean, no one has really done that. And so they're the greatest players in the world, but I think he has a chance to play a role as some of these others do too. And if they can play a role, this team will be infinitely better. So that to me is the biggest question mark. Can those younger guys step up and play significant roles?
I like it. I would say I would add to I've heard really, really good things about Chibi Ukebu, who also was an academy signing, who's been playing really well at center back. I know he's a young guy, but by the way, I think he's grown 3 inches since he's signed. He's huge.
Man.
So I'm excited to see him.
I think Moppet grew 3 inches, but the wrong way. I think it was like wide.
I think so too. I think that's been the case in the offseason for Moffat.
Yeah.
The camera adds 10 pounds, Rob. We know this.
Yeah, exactly.
For Adam Moffat.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, does 17 returners, not that it makes it easier for a broadcaster at all, but definitely you get to know these guys a little bit. You know their tendencies, you know what they do. You know what they've done last year and maybe even the year before that. What does that make preparation for you look like in 2024?
I love it. It means you have more stories to tell too, right? And so it's good. Yeah, it's and you just obviously the big thing for me is that I've really enjoyed this group the last 3 years. Well, this is going to third year, really, right? And it's like that. It's easy to root for, the guys you're calling games for. So that is a really big bonus. And they're not only good, which makes it fun. Let's be honest. When you have a team that's not great, it's tough to do this every day. But every Saturday, I think it's an opportunity to see what these guys can do. And it's going to be exciting and just see how they grow. I think that's the other thing fun to see is, what's Dami going to look like this year? What's out there going to look like? What's Christian Pirano going to look like? And so will there be a goalkeeper, I say controversy, but real battle this year, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know they're very excited about Jared coming in. And so that's, there's always fun to it. And I'll be honest, doing the games Adam Moffat's been a lot of fun, and he brings a great dynamic to the broadcast. So I think that's enjoyable. And when you have all that, it works well.
What about around the league? We saw Juan Guerra moved on to Dallas Dynamo assistant coach,
Dynamo
right?
assistant, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I'm interested to see what Phoenix looks like this year, but we've seen a little bit of movement around the league, not a ton. What are your thoughts, just quickly? I know we haven't really gone in and done a lot of the deep research, but just quickly, like where do you think the league's at on the Western Conference?
Well, as Juan Guerra, I don't know as a tactician, but as a people manager, he's probably up there, right? Like guys love playing for him, and he probably didn't have the support in Oakland, but once he kind of got the right guys in Phoenix, they bled for him, and I think that's where they are going to miss a big chunk. So I don't believe they'll have a great of a season, and I think it's just going to be hard. Now they've got talented players, don't get me wrong, but he was able to draw the best out. I mean, he made some big decisions, putting some of their big goal scorers on the bench late, right? And that just, but they all bought in. There wasn't a crack in that team, and so I think that's going to be something you have to look out for now in the league. Where I think before just talent would get you, but I think when managers are able to get the best out of their players and the team sticks together, and I think Mark has done a great job in Sacramento, obviously, but those other clubs, that's going to be kind of their big question marks is who can have a team with the talent matching with the right managerial position. Because as a coach these days, it's not just, can you kick it? I think all sports in the last 20 years, it's become more how do you work within the personalities you already have versus what's the talent on the field. And, everyone wants a Messi, a Michael Jordan, or Ronaldo, whoever, but you're not always going to get that. So you have to try to get the best out of guys in the certain ways. And the better teams are the ones that do that. And I think, to Pittsburgh's credit, that coaching staff of theirs has been incredible over the last years. And you look at the talent, you're like, pretty good. And obviously they lost in a tough way round one, but I mean, they were dominant all season. And that's not by accident. So
Yeah, Danny Dichio taking over that club in Detroit. That's the one thing. Sacramento
yeah.
with 2 new assistant coaches too. And I've heard from when I talked to Briggs, the change obviously isn't. It's the same kind of thing as when you have players returning, right? You have the comfortability, but having a new coaching staff, I think, is bringing something fresh that he appreciates. Obviously, Martin Vasquez has got a load of experience, so I'm excited to see what he can bring in. And Mark was even frank. He's like the ability for him to being able to speak Spanish with some of the guys who are Spanish speaking only is I think it's gonna be a big asset. Mark said that he was wearing like the Google earpiece.
Yeah, I heard that on the podcast. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, wow. First off, how did we not know that? Maybe you'll
Isn't he
need that
coaching
when
with the Google,
yeah,
what's the, or not
Google,
the
yeah,
iPhone,
the Apple thing.
Apple,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever those 3D glasses
Sometimes you'll need
are.
that when Moffat gets a little too Scottish.
Yeah, exactly. Can't understand what he's saying, but the problem is there's not a program that can translate that either. That's the real
Yeah,
shame.
that's the problem.
But here's the one thing I'll say about the coach staff. I mean, I think it's great the Spanish speaking and like there's better connections there with players when you kind of speak your native language. But I think it also brings a different voice. A lot of these guys have heard Mark for a lot of years, right? And so there's always like a time limit with coaches because guys are tuned out. But I think with the staff changing a little bit, I think that keeps things fresh and it keeps guys engaged, right? So on any coach, I mean, very few coaches stay with a club for a decade plus, and whether they move on for whatever reason, but a lot of times guys just tend to hear new voices. So to me, that might be just as valuable as anything else. Is that it's continuing to push what Mark and maybe Todd Dunham's ultimate vision may be, but it's not the same voice they've heard now for 3 or 4 seasons. It's going to be some fresh ideas within that system that hopefully take you a long way. And I think it's like growing up, right? Your parents tell you one thing, and you're just like, I don't want to listen to this more. Your uncle says it too, and you're like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's just how it's human nature, right? Whether you're Phil Jackson, Mark Berg, whoever, like you're just gonna have to have different voices, and I think that will be a real big addition this year. And we'll see what they come up with. I mean, they'll see what kind of new tactics or set pieces or whatever else may work. I mean, there's a lot of great pieces to work with in that, and so that'll be really fun to see how it evolves.
I agree. I'm excited. We're still 3-4 weeks away, pretty close, 3.5 weeks ish from when this comes out. It'll be 2.5 weeks from opening night. Rob, excited that you're back on the call with Moffat this year. Always a blast. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun year, I think.
A lot of games. They'll be back on Fox 40, so that'll be fun.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think. Oh yeah, we will announce it by next Wednesday. It's like, oh, I'm sure. I was trying to think about when. I was like, hey, Rob, don't careful, man.
All
Don't.
All right, we'll cut that and rewind that. Then here we go.
No. It's good. It's good. It'll come out by next Wednesday. It's not going until next Wednesday anyway. So appreciate it. I think you just got an email about breaking that on Fox, just so you know. So might need to check that. Thank you, man. Thanks for doing this. And there's still time. That's right. Thank you for doing this, man. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. And opening night around the corner.
Thanks, buddy.